612 hours, Gulf of Aden. The horizon was still black. The sea, a glassy, deceptive calm. The Medgar Evers cut through the water at 18 knots, her bow slicing clean lines under a sky scattered with the last stars of the night. Inside the bridge, the dim red lighting painted the faces of the watch crew in shades of blood. The low hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the steel decking. Then came the sound, a sharp electronic chime from the SPS-73 radar console. 1 ping, 2, 3. Then a chorus of tones, like an alarm in a submarine movie. Only this wasn't a movie. Multiple surface contacts, bearing 090, range 12 nautical miles, speed 35 knots, and closing. Petty Officer, First Class Morales. The radar operator leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she confirmed the readings. Sir, we've got fast movers. More than 20. Correction, 31 contacts. Captain Jonathan Harlan stepped up to her console, scanning the green phosphor blips clustered like angry wasps on the screen. Classification? Unknown, small craft, no eyes. Formation looks coordinated. Harlan didn't waste a heartbeat. Sound general quarters. A klaxon blared, a metallic howl that rippled through every deck. A crew rushed to their stations, some pulling on ballistic vests, others strapping into gunnery chairs. In the Combat Information Center kick, the watch officer began feeding data into the tactical data system. Bearings, ranges, relative speeds. The picture forming was ugly. Morales added quietly, almost as if to herself, "Sir, they're coming in a crescent formation. Textbook pincer. 614 hours. Outside on deck, the air was cool, salt-scented, but carried a strange stillness. From the port side rail, Seaman Carter could just make out the faint silhouettes of boats against the horizon. Small, darting shapes, moving in unnatural unison. Beside him, Chief Gunner's mate Mac McAllister adjusted the tripod of the M2 Browning. 50 cal. "Those ain't no fishing boats," Mac muttered. "That's a swarm." "Bridge, 0616 hours, radio them," Harlan ordered. The bridge communications officer flipped open the mic. "Unidentified vessels. This is the United States Navy ship Medgar Evers. You are approaching a U.S. military vessel at high speed. Alter course immediately, or you will be fired upon." No reply. Instead, through the binoculars, the shapes grew larger, long, narrow skiffs with multiple outboard engines, rooster tails of white spray trailing behind them. The rising sun caught the glint of something metallic, mounted machine guns. "Weapons free if they close inside to nautical miles," Harlan said flatly. 618 hours. CIC, a petty officer, fed updated data into the plot. 31 confirmed. 12 from port. 13 from starboard. 6 from the stern. "They're trying to box us in." Morales called out another update. "Range closing fast. 8 miles. Estimated intercept. 8 minutes." The tension on the bridge was thick, but the crew's movements were precise. Drilled to muscle memory, Harlan keyed the ship-wide intercom. "All hands. This is the captain. We are under imminent threat from hostile fast craft." This is not a drill. The camera, if this were film, would cut to multiple stations. Security detachment loading 7.62 millimeters belts into the MK240B machine guns. LRAD long-range acoustic device. Operators powering up the dish on the foredeck. Damage control teams standing by in case of hull breach. Outside, the low rumble of the ship's engines deepened as the helmsman increased throttle to maximum safe speed. 622 hours. Visual contact, the sun's first light, broke the horizon, revealing the enemy in full detail. The pirate skiffs were battered but fast. fiberglass hulls painted in mismatched colors, some bearing crude hand-painted flags. Each carried between 6 and 10 men, armed with AK-47s, PKM machine guns, and in at least 2 cases, RPG-7 launchers. The lead boats began weaving, throwing up spray to make targeting difficult. Others split off into flanking positions, maintaining radio silence. "They're probing us," Mac muttered from the portside gun mount. "Looking for a soft angle. 624 hours. First aggressive move?" One pirate skiff surged ahead of the formation, cutting directly toward the Medgar Evers port bow. The LRAD operator got the go-ahead from the bridge. Piercing, 162 decibel sound beam lanced out over the water, aimed directly at the small craft. The pirates doubled over, hands to their ears, but the boat kept coming. "Warning shots," Harlan ordered. 50 cal roared to life, its deep, hammering rhythm echoing across the water. Splashes erupted just ahead of the skiff, sending up plumes of seawater. This time, the boat veered off, regrouping with the others. 626 hours. Situation critical, they were now inside 5 nautical miles, well within RPG range. On the starboard side, a pirate boat made a sudden course change, angling in for a possible ladder drop attempt. Harlan's voice was low but decisive. "We hold them here. No one gets close enough to touch our hull." The first real shots of the engagement were seconds away. 410 hours, same day, pre-attack, before the swarm appeared. The Medgar Evers was on a routine, though strategically vital supply run. Her mission: delivers 7,000 tons of ammunition, food, fuel, and spare parts to a carrier strike. Group operating in the Arabian Sea. The ship was a Lewis and Clark class dry cargo ammunition ship, a civilian crewed vessel operated by the Military Sealift Command, but armed and escorted by a detachment of U.S. Navy security specialists. Specifications: length, 689 feet beam, 105 feet draft, 34 feet full load displacement, 41,000 tons top speed, 20 knots defensive systems, 2 Mk38 25mm autocannons 4 times, M2 HB.50 caliber machine guns, 2 Mk15 phalanx CIWS, 4 anti-missile defense, rarely used in piracy LRAD and laser dazzlers for non-lethal deterrence crew composition. Civilian mariners, 120, responsible for navigation, engineering. Cargo ops, Navy Security Detachment, 36 trained in close quarters ship defense, boarding countermeasures, and small arms tactics aviation detachment. 12. For operating and maintaining the embarked MH-60S Seahawk helicopter strategic context. The Gulf of Aden, one of the world's most dangerous maritime choke points, connects the Arabian Sea to the Red Sea via the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Nearly 12% of the world's seaborne trade passes through this narrow corridor. For the Navy, it's not just about protecting trade, it's about ensuring freedom of navigation and denying hostile forces control of a critical sea lane. Previous incidents, the crew was well aware of the region's dangers. MV Maersk, Alabama, 2009. The famous Captain Phillips incident. USS Bainbridge DDG-96, involved in the rescue, proof that naval intervention works, but only if close enough. Multiple merchant hijackings between 2010 to 2012 that ended in hostage situations. Although piracy in the region had declined after 2015 due to international patrols, intelligence briefings suggested a recent resurgence. Better armed, better organized groups, possibly backed by regional warlords with political motives. At 0400, the ship was on a steady course, 18 knots, seas calm. Chief Engineer Daniels was in the engine control room, reviewing fuel consumption reports. On the bridge, officer of the deck Ood, Lieutenant Kendra Voss sipped black coffee, watching the horizon glow faintly with the approaching dawn. In the galley, the civilian cooks prepped breakfast: powdered eggs, bacon, and coffee strong enough to dissolve a spoon. Down on the flight deck, the Seahawk helicopter was secured but prepped, fueled weapons mounts ready if needed. The aircrew knew that pirates rarely attacked ships with air assets visible, but they also knew visibility didn't always deter the desperate. At 0427, the ship's communications officer received an encrypted Sitroop situation report from Naval Forces Central Command. The message contained a warning: increased small boat activity 40 to 60 nm north of Somali coast. Multiple vessels observed in proximity, suspected hostile intent. The Medgar Evers was already in that general area. Lieutenant Voss logged the message and passed it to Captain Harlan, who was still in his cabin. His reply was calm but immediate: post additional lookouts, double watch on the radar. It was a standard precaution, but as the radar operator would discover minutes later, this would be no ordinary day. The Medgar Evers operated under a layered alert system for piracy. Condition white, normal cruising; minimal threat condition yellow, possible threat detected; extra watches condition orange, confirmed suspicious contacts; defensive systems manned condition red; hostile intent confirmed, weapons free under row rules of engagement. When the swarm appeared on radar, the ship jumped from yellow straight to orange, and within minutes was staring down condition red. Unlike a warship, the Medgar Evers wasn't built to fight. She was a lifeline. Without her cargo, the carrier strike group she was resupplying would be forced to divert or slow operations, which could alter the balance of power in an already volatile region. The pirates weren't just threatening a ship, they were threatening an entire operational plan. And they probably didn't even know it. By 0600, the first faint shapes appeared on radar. By 0612, the swarm was within 12 nautical miles. By 0624, the sun was up, and the pirates were in visual range. The stage was set. The Medgar Evers plowed steadily through calm waters, her bow slicing a faint white V into the steel-blue surface. The bridge was quiet except for the constant hum of electronics and the occasional hiss of the VHF radio. Radar operator Petty Officer 2nd Class Miguel Cosa sat with his eyes fixed on the SPS-73 surface search display. He had been at it for 2 hours already, long enough for his eyes to start playing tricks on him. At first, it was just the usual clutter: fishing dhows, cargo ships, and the occasional speedboat hugging the coastline. Then something appeared that made him lean forward. 430 to 3 small contacts, 28 nautical miles off the port bow. Their radar cross-section was tiny. But what caught Rojas's attention was their formation, evenly spaced, closing at about 18 knots. T keyed the come to the officer of the deck. OOD. CIC. 3 contacts bearing 085, range 28 nautical. Speed and course indicate intercept. Lieutenant Voss walked over to the radar console. She watched the blips for a moment, then glanced at the navigation chart. Probably fishing boats, but log it. Let's see if they alter course. 439, the 3 contacts were joined by 2 more, coming from a slightly different bearing. Now they weren't heading in a straight line. They were spreading out. Rojas's gut tightened. Fishing boats didn't do that. He'd seen this before, during an escort mission 2 years earlier. It was a classic pincer movement used by Somali pirate gangs to trap slower ships. He called it in again. Ood. Now 5 contacts. Bearings converging. They're adjusting speed to match ours. This time, Voss didn't hesitate. She picked up the sound-powered phone. Captain, to the bridge. 444. Captain Harlan arrived in a navy fleece jacket, coffee mug in hand. He took one look at the radar and frowned. A helm. Maintain course and speed. CIC. Keep tracking. Weapons detachment. Standby non-lethal deterrence. Condition yellow. 447 on the starboard bridge wing. Seaman lookout Bryce Keller peered through his binoculars into the pre-dawn haze. He spotted 2 dark shapes skimming low over the water, wakes trailing like silver threads. Bridge, starboard lookout. I have visual on small craft, bearing 120. Fast movers. Multiple wakes behind. The OOD relayed to the captain, who simply nodded. The air was getting heavier, the kind of oppressive stillness that made experienced sailors uneasy. "Mark, engage." The first M240 machine gun on the port weather deck opened up, short controlled bursts aimed just ahead of the nearest skiff's bow. Spray exploded upward, forcing the pirate helmsman to throttle down momentarily. Another M240 on the starboard side cut loose, its rounds snapping overhead like tearing canvas. 5:53. First hit on a pirate vessel. One skiff, attempting to juke past the suppressive fire, took a burst directly into its outboard engine. A puff of white smoke erupted from the motor, and the boat slewed sideways, dead in the water. Its crew shouted in panic, waving arms as they drifted. 554. Pirates adapt, but the pirates were not amateurs. They shifted tactics, splitting into smaller clusters and zigzagging toward the Medgar Evers. Some used the disabled boat as partial cover, trying to approach in its wake. Others pushed toward the stern, where the ship's helideck offered a tempting boarding point. 0556 RPG threat emerges. The lookout on the aft deck shouted into his headset. "Bridge. I've got an RPG on the sternmost skiff, range about 800 yards. The M240 gunners shifted immediately, stitching the waterline near the threat. The RPG gunner ducked but didn't fire. Yet, 557. Maneuver warfare at low speed. Harlan ordered helm. "Come to course 180. Bring our stern toward the largest cluster. Let's give them the wake." The Medgar Evers wasn't a nimble destroyer, but her massive bulk and displacement created a brutal wake at speed. The stern swung, churning the water into a roiling mess that made high-speed approach nearly impossible for light skiffs. Several pirate boats bounced violently, one nearly capsizing as it tried to cut across the froth. 559. Motherships hold back. Interestingly, the two large pirate motherships kept their distance, hanging back beyond 5,000 yards. It was a clear sign. They were the command nodes, directing the swarm, not meant for direct combat. 600. Close quarters approaching despite losses and setbacks. At least 8 pirate skiffs were now within 300 yards of the Medgar Evers. The sound of their engines was now a constant roar, punctuated by sporadic bursts of gunfire. Morrell's voice came over comms. "Captain, we're seconds from boarding attempts on port and stern." Harlan's reply was calm and sharp. "Then, let's make sure they regret it." 601 hours. Gulf of Aden. The air was thick with the smell of salt, diesel, and gunpowder. Every clang of metal on the Medgar Evers decks seemed louder, sharper. From the bridge windows, the pirate skiffs looked enormous now. Not dots, not even specks, but snarling, tangible threats surging over the water. 602. Boarding ladders sighted. Port side, visual on ladders. The call came from Petty Officer Cantu on the weather deck. Several pirates had unfurled crude but effective boarding ladders, lengths of rope knotted with wooden dowels. Grappling hooks tied to the top. Their intent was no longer in question. 603. Security Detachment response. The Navy Security Detachment moved into their final defensive positions. 2-man fire teams took up overlapping arcs of fire along the port and stern rails. Positioned in the aloft lookout, adjusted their scopes, and breathed slow, steady breaths. Chief Morrell barked. "No one crosses the rail, period. Make them turn back or make them swim." 604. Pirates within 150 yards. The first wave of skiffs on the port side was closing at frightening speed to 30 knots in glassy water. Rooster tails arcing behind them. The LRAD blared again. The laser dazzlers swept back and forth, but this time the pirates didn't flinch. They were committed. 605. Warning shots escalate. Weapons free for disabling fire. Aim for engines. On that command, the portside M240 gunners stitched precise bursts into the outboards of the nearest boats. One engine coughed black smoke, sputtered, and died instantly. The skiff spun sideways, nearly capsizing as its crew grabbed the gunnels in panic. But the other skiffs roared past their disabled comrade, engines screaming in defiance. 606. First grappling attempt. A pirate in a red football jersey hurled a grappling hook toward the Medgar Evers railing. The hook clanged against steel but failed to catch. Before he could try again, a burst from an M240 punched holes in the water inches from his arm, forcing him to drop flat. 607. Starboard flank under pressure while the port side was locked in battle. 3 skiffs made a hard turn from the starboard bow toward the midships. Their movement was almost invisible on radar until the last moment, masked by the larger group, S Chaos. Starboard midships, prepare to engage.
All the gunners.
There, reacted instantly, their tracers lacing the waterline. One skiff jerked violently, its bow lifting as a round tore through the motor housing. 608 RPG fired from the stern. An RPG flashed, a corkscrewing trail of smoke ripping toward the ship. The round slammed into the water just 20 feet short, throwing up a geyser of spray against the hull. On the bridge, Harlan didn't blink. Helm, come to course 170. Make 15 knots. The turn forced the stern threat to lose alignment, while pushing the bow into safer water. 610. Point-blank engagements, several skiffs reached within 50 yards. The Navy security teams now fired in short, lethal bursts, not just at engines, but at the hulls themselves. The sound was deafening on deck, a constant chatter of M240s, punctuated by the sharp crack of the sniper rifle. One pirate, trying to stand and fire an AK-47 from a pitching skiff, was thrown back as a round snapped the weapon from his hands. 611. Tactical wake maneuver, all ahead flank, bring her around hard to starboard. The Medgar Evers screws bit into the sea, the massive hull swinging sharply. The wake slammed into a cluster of pursuing skiffs, like a rolling wall, tossing men overboard. 2 boats went over entirely, their crews vanishing beneath the foam before scrambling to the surface. 612 boarding repelled on the port side, the closest skiff finally tried to hook a ladder onto the rail. It caught for a moment, just long enough for one pirate to plant a foot on the rung. Before Petty Officer Cantu kicked it free, and an M240 burst riddled the line, sending it and its user tumbling into the sea. 613. Pirates begin to falter. The swarm's momentum wavered. Of the original 31 boats, at least 6 were now disabled or sunk. 2 more drifted with smoking engines. Radio intercepts crackled with fragments of argument in Somali and Arabic. The pirate leaders were losing control of their assault. 614. Counterattack prep from the bridge. Harlan saw the hesitation and seized it. Weapons, concentrate on the stragglers. Let's make them think this is the end. The security teams doubled down, their fire methodical and punishing. A sniper's single shot took the pilot of a stern-approach skiff cleanly. The vessel spinning aimlessly until it collided with another, and both went down. 615. Mothership signals retreat from the rear of the swarm. One of the motherships fired a bright flare into the sky, the universal sign among these pirate factions to disengage. Several skiffs peeled away instantly, throttles roaring as they turned back toward the east, but not all obeyed. Some lingered, either too stubborn or too desperate to retreat. 616. Last push at the stern. 3 remaining skiffs at the stern tried a final desperate run. The Medgar Evers crew, now fully in rhythm, poured concentrated fire at them. One engine exploded in a flash of smoke. Another boat sheared violently to the right, hitting the wake wrong and flipping completely. The last skiff slowed, its crew visibly debating. Then, without ceremony, they turned and sped away. 618. Contact over. All stations, cease fire. Maintain visual watch. Do not relax yet. The ocean was now littered with debris. Splintered wood, shredded ropes, abandoned ladders. The smell of burnt fuel hung over the water. Of the 31 boats, fewer than 20 made it back under power. The pirates who didn't retreat tried uncoordinated strikes. Navy gunners, now fully locked in, systematically disabled skiffs with precision bursts. LRAD and high-speed maneuvers disrupted any boarding attempts. Damage was minimal. Some small caliber impacts on the hull, no breaches. Crew morale was steady but tinged with adrenaline. The engagement left a tangible sense of unity and readiness on board. USS Winston S. Churchill moved to pursue the pirate mother ships. A Navy helo shadowed the retreating vessels, recording intel for later ops. The incident report began immediately for tactical lessons learned. Pirate forces traced to a punt-land haven. The failed attack damaged a larger smuggling operations, manpower, and assets. Intercepted communications suggested significant losses and leadership disputes. The Medgar Evers resumed course, unbreached and unbowed. This clash became a quiet but powerful warning. U.S. Navy supply ships are not vulnerable prey. In under 20 minutes, the swarm was broken, with multiple pirate vessels sunk or disabled. The attack that began as a coordinated pirate swarm ended as a chaotic, desperate retreat. Not a single pirate set foot on the Medgar Evers. The ship steamed westward, her crew returning to routine, knowing they had just played their part in keeping the shipping lanes secure. Far from the headlines and far from home, the real victory was in the calm that returned to the Gulf of Aden and the certainty that any who tried again would meet the same fate.